Currently, there's a global shortage of skilled labor. There's disadvantages to paper-based validation because it's time-consuming and bureaucratic, has slower responsiveness for auditors when they're asking questions. All the paper that has to be handled, printed out, routed by hand, and then stored in a validation library. During audits, it's very difficult to recover those packages and pull them out in time for auditors' questions. There's also the concern of loss of materials that are in these validation packages, pages that may fall out, or pages that can be changed after the fact. This makes paper-based validation extremely onerous. There's advantages of paperless and remote validation. You have increased consumer security and patient security, compliance because of you cannot alter the data once it's been entered, data integrity so that we know that what's been entered, again, has not been altered after the fact. This really comes into play as well. Data integrity is a big topic for the FDA these days. Many of you might be familiar with Novartis's issues with the FDA on some data integrity for test method validation between their phase 1 and 3 clinical trials. The FDA is focusing in that area, and any solutions that are implemented that help reassure them that the data has not been altered or changed along the way will be viewed positively in the FDA's eyes, I believe. It has a greater quality of life for employees because now we don't need to be printing out a bunch of paper, filling it out by hand. There's entry errors that are made, mistakes with even people just signing their names or their date. You also have better management of the process for validation with paperless validation. We're going to get into that more specifically later in this presentation, and overall greater efficiency for management of the process.
The companies work with many steps to conclude validation lifecycle. The base of the pyramid represents the majority of them, who build validation documents using Word and Excel tools, usually a manual and informal review and approval workflow, before printing, collecting, manual signature, organizing papers in binders, run tests manually, and file, all in binders. There are 7 steps. We propose to reduce 7 steps in one, to reduce time, costs, and regulatory risks. At the same time, we increase efficiency, data integrity, compliance, and sustainability.
Validating from anywhere, your team can be anywhere in the world to validate software, equipment, facilities, utilities, processes. You are able to monitor all of your client activities real-time on this database. This means like workflow management. You're able to pull up, say you have 5 different facilities that you're concurrently validating with the same equipment, filling lines, packaging, etc. You can pull up each workflow stream and see where the progress is real-time on your each validation in each facility. So one stream may be further ahead, the other one not. You can determine where you need to add resources to try and pull schedule up to where you need to be. There's also a reduction in validation costs. Not only the expenses for traveling to your site, on-site, as well as it will enable you to be able to have competitive bidding, not location-based. So personally, I work remotely 99% of the time, and this enables me to use the internet and all the video conferencing capabilities. I have not personally done validation remotely, but I have done other pieces like auditing, project management, quality documentation, etc., routing with my clients' EDMS systems that are somewhat paper-based as well. But by being able to validate anywhere, you can leverage workforce from around the globe.
Alkaloid from Skopje, North Macedonia, Europe, is a company that more than 8 decades has been operating in the field of manufacturing drugs, cosmetic and chemical products. We had a huge responsibility to conduct remote validation of the most important software used for work and data management in our company. Although it seems like a big challenge at the beginning, keeping in mind actual COVID-19 situation forced us to try remote validation. Surprisingly, it was a great experience for us. The Go5 platform is easy to use, documents are easily accessed, there is a digital review and approval workflow, and a knowledge base library. Also, we received complete support and availability of the 5 employees even we had 5 hours time difference.
The remote validation with 5 was quite a rewarding experience altogether. I never had such an experience in my 10 years in validation, and to be perfectly honest, this way of work, even though it seems hard and unreachable, it's easy to acknowledge and accept. Our validation team consists of 8 team members covering all teams and functionalities of the project to be in compliance with the European GMP and FDA's 21 CFR Part 11 alike, being that it's especially and always a great challenge to validate computerized and automated systems and processes due to their specificity and complexity. The greater challenge was the time difference, but even with the 5 hours time difference, we were always able to function just as easy as if we were physically in the same place. If there's a will, there's a way, of course. Being that computerized systems validation, as any other validation, must follow a defined hierarchy, this approach in a way has more benefits than the orthodox paper-based validation with its straightforward way of evaluating all the segments of the validation documentation.
Alkaloid started intensive planning and preparations for the conversion project from the existing SAP ERP system to the new SAP S4HANA platform in the second half of 2019. Perform conversion and validation in 6 months for 6 different group companies in different countries where we use SAP system with a team of about 120 members for 7 modules: finance, controlling, material management, warehouse management, sales and distribution, planning production, quality management, HCM, including the ABAP and BC team, and of course validation team was a big challenge. There was not much experience in the wider region. It was quite complex and with a lot of big issues from which it was very important to choose the right partners in addition to SAP for migration and especially for the validation. For migration, we decide on our current partner B4B from Croatia, but choosing a partner for validation required deeper market analysis, bidding, evaluation, and of course communication with bidders, so we opted for 5 validation from Brazil. The first joint project at a great distance on different continents, a complete remote project, but the partnership proved to be a complete success. It was a pleasure to work with 5 validation, and we are definitely counting on future joint projects.
So on the sustainability front, there are several ways that paperless validation can help improve our global footprint. The biggest one I'm going to say is eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from air travel. That's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. Smaller impacts would be printing costs. We don't have to print paper, cartridges, all the time also involved in collating those things is on the plus side as well for savings just in general. And many companies use contracts from Xerox, Hewlett Packard, etc. for their printing services on site. When we can reduce that demand, we can reduce how much we're spending and wasting and sending to the landfill eventually. It also allows you to be more competitive by soliciting quotes and bids from companies around the world. So the similar thing is applied right now to people looking for jobs, which is, since they're all remote, you're not restricted to just your geographical area or whether or not you would like to relocate. You can apply to remote positions. Likewise, if you're using a paper-based validation solution, you're limited in geographic area to only people that want to travel to you. But a paperless validation system now allows you to open up your bidding process to worldwide companies because the time zone issue can be crossed very easily, as well as just finding professionals on an effective cost basis worldwide will help save costs for your company overall. And paperless validation allows us to have a cloud-based solution. Operators are normally supposed to be running your validation anyway. When I trained, in my experience, we always had SOPs written, operators trained on the SOPs, and they were the ones that are supposed to execute, not engineers jumping in and fiddling with things. So if the operators are running the process anyway, we can use and leverage that situation by having a remote either camera or a internet-based iPad type application, or the camera on your laptop, show the objective evidence, and the actual technician or operator that's executing the test can actually just check the box and be signed off and trained on your protocol. When we don't have people on site, validation professionals, service providers, in fill areas such as Class 100 areas, we're now not loading up that area and asking the question, if we have a media run fail, was it because we had too many personnel in the area or too many papers flowing in and out? So that clearly is an impact when we have no control or less control because everyone has to be on site with a paper-based validation. So occasionally remote validation in 100% format with no people on site is not possible, and I'll let Sylvia expound on that later in the slides.
Yeah, that's it. Let's talk about 100% remote validation test execution. It is possible to run tests remotely of management systems, equipment software from QC labs, manufacturing utilities automation systems that are connected to internet. That is, if you can share our screen via video conference tool, it is possible for us to obtain screenshots remotely without being a user or on-site. So authorized user shares their screen with third-party validation professional, if applicable, with no need to grant access of the finally validated system. In our most cases, we are engaged to validate our client systems and perform this remotely, without need to give us access to the client's computer systems undergoing validation. Now let's talk a bit about automation systems or IT infrastructure qualification. I mean, when equipment is physically installed with no internet connection, the objective evidence or proof is captured through a tablet by a professional on site when it's possible to view or access the HMI screen, human-machine interface, remotely. There is no need for both professionals to be present in the same place as in classical validation.
Can add value by not having to pay for a lot of people to travel on site. That would be the first thing that comes to mind. Having more skilled labor from across a greater cross-section because they're people who are willing to work remotely versus only people who are willing to work on site. That would be the other one. Class 100 areas, like I said, filling lines immediately comes to mind. It is, what's the word? If they have not moved to all isolator technology, where that's just the filling line is in the isolator, if it's truly a full suite, you have the restrictions of, you got to be gowned. That's cost there. You're introducing personnel that may not be fully trained. They've trained up on your SOP, but if they make errors, that's a negative for your environmental controls. These are all things that are negatives to having personnel on site and doing the qualification. So I think that overall, having a remote type validation would eliminate those risks. Leverage the personnel that's on site that's fully trained to execute the validation, and just use something that's remote, a remote solution.